안녕하세요. 스위스로 팟캐스트 강성입니다. 제가 오늘 좀 특별한 에피소드를 준비했거든요. 지금 한국에 골든스테이트 워리어스 팬들이 엄청 많은데 골든스테이트가 어떤 무브도 가져가지 않아서 굉장히 왜 이런 일이 발생하는지 궁금해하는 사람들이 많고 그 다음에 뭐 조나단 쿠민가의 상황에 대해서도 궁금해하시는 분들이 많아서 제가 골든스테이트 워리어스의 캡스페이스 전문가 GSWCBA라는 계정을 운영하고 계시는 펄크스라는 분을 제가 인터뷰 게스트로 모셔서 스위스어 최초로 인터뷰 컨텐츠를 진행하게 됐습니다. 그래서 이거를 보여드릴 텐데요. 제가 네이티브 스피커가 아니다 보니까 발음이 좀 안 좋을 수 있어요. 그래서 여러분들이 그거를 좀 참으시면서 봐주시면 감사하겠습니다. 그러면 인터뷰 영상 시작하도록 하겠습니다. Hello, welcome to Swiss Soul. Today we have a special guest joining us today, someone who's become a must-follow voice for any Warriors fan who cares about cap space, trade, and all the things related to salary and payroll. You might know him as GSWCBA on Twitter, X. We've got Perks here with us. He's known for breaking down the most complex Warriors contract situation in a way that's easy to understand, and honestly, a lot of fans wonder if he secretly works in the front office. Today, we are going to unpack the Golden State Warriors' very busy and dynamic offseason, and yes, you can catch the sarcasm there. What's really going on with Jonathan Kuminga and where things could go from here. So, Perks, welcome to Swiss Soul, and how's things going?
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I know, the Warriors have a tremendous following in Asia, Korea, so I'm happy to try to hopefully explain some of this very complicated words and jargon about the cap and why the Warriors haven't seemingly done anything, and hopefully can make it understandable and a little bit better.
Yeah, as you said, there are tons of Warriors fans in Korea, just like everywhere in the world. Heading into this off-season, the excitement was there. Fans were on the trade machine every day, talking about which player could come in to help Steph, Jimmy, and Dre. But today is 26th of July, and 29 teams in the NBA have made at least one move, and the Warriors is not one of the 29 teams. So here we are, instead of talking about how this new look Warriors team might play, the basketball X's and O's, the fit, the excitement, we are just stuck waiting. The fans here in a void, they are in agony and they are confused, they are frustrated. So help us understand why is this happening? What's the holdup?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously the biggest issue is Kuminga. And, it's not just him. If you look at, the restricted free agent market. So the way it works in the NBA is you usually have two types of free agents. You have restricted and unrestricted. So if you're unrestricted, you're free to negotiate any of the 30 teams, sign any sort of deal that you're offered. But if you're restricted like Kuminga is, then basically the Warriors have dibs on you. So like if Kuminga goes out and, he gets a contract from Brooklyn, signs an offer sheet, the Warriors can choose to match that and bring him back. So it really, narrows down the options that Kuminga has. And so what's been happening is he is looking for a contract number that's higher than what the Warriors want to offer him. And so because they haven't been able to come to an agreement, he's been, talking to other teams and trying to see if he can get them to trade for him. But that's the problem, is they have to trade for him. And because they have to trade for him, the Warriors have to, agree to that. Yeah. So that's why we're kind of stuck here in this limbo situation, because, the Warriors aren't upping their offer and JK isn't lowering what he's asking for.
Yeah.
And a team hasn't come in yet with an offer that either party is, well, at least the Warriors are happy with. So we're kind of stuck just waiting for, who's going to budge first, essentially.
Yeah, I think nobody has cap space to offer what Jonathan Kuminga wants, and it seems like Brooklyn, maybe they are only team, and they have their own RFA situation too. So it's very complicated, right?
Yeah, and so for Brooklyn specifically, they're the only team that has like real cap space. I believe they're at about 28 million.
Yeah.
Utah has a little bit. They're about like closer to 8 to 10. They could create some more if they cut some players. But that's really the two teams that can do what's called an offer sheet. An offer sheet, if the player and the team agree to it, then the Warriors have to either match it or not match it. And because those are the only teams who can do that, these other teams that we've heard, the Kings and the Suns have interest in Kuminga, they can't do an offer sheet because they don't have cap space. Yep. So they have to agree to a trade. And that's what's been taking so long because the Warriors don't like what they're being offered.
Yeah. Let's zoom out a little from Jonathan Kuminga situation and see the big picture of the Warriors' upcoming season. Right now, they have only 9 players on the roster. And how many players are they required to have at the start of a new season? And what options do they have to fill out the rest of the roster?
Sure, yeah. So why don't I share my salary spreadsheet?
Yeah,
so
great.
if you go over to my Twitter or my Blue Sky, I always have this pinned. I keep track of the Warriors cap. It's just an Excel, well, I guess a Google sheet that you can easily access. It's publicly available. You're free to download it as well, play around with it. But this is where things stand right now. So as you said, you got 9 players under contract, as you can see here.
Yeah.
The Warriors are currently, total team salary is about $171 million.
Yep.
That includes some incentives to Moody. We can get into that later. But basically, you have to kind of fill out these spots right here. So you have 15 open. You have to have at least 14. So the Warriors do need to sign at least 5 by the start of the season in October, basically. And so the way you can do that is, while, as you can see, the Warriors don't have cap space, they do have some exceptions. So exceptions allow you to go over the cap space and sign players. So, for example, we've heard a lot about Al Horford. That's a name that's been mentioned as someone the Warriors kind of have this verbal handshake agreement with. They're expected to sign him to the taxpayer mid-level, which is an exception that allows you to go over the cap. So he would be one of the players occupying the spot here. And then another name that we've heard a lot about is D'Anthony Melton for probably the minimum salary. So that would be a second player. So with those two, you'd kind of be at 11, and then you basically need 3 more, including Kuminga if he decides to stay or not, or if they find a way to keep him or not. But yeah, that's basically, they need to fill out these 5 spots before the end of before the season begins.
You mentioned Al Horford and D'Anthony Melton. So let's say the Warriors will have Al Horford and D'Anthony Melton on the roster next season. I'm guessing the finishing lineup, not the starting lineup, the finishing lineup will be Steph, D'Anthony Melton, Jimmy, Dre, and Al Horford, right? That's basically Rick Celebrini's Dream 5, right? I mean, it is very dangerous lineup, I would say. This lineup will be super competitive in the playoffs. But the thing is, you got to go through 82 games to get in the playoff. So that's where I think the challenge lies. This group can be absolutely compete of the highest level come playoff time. But the key will be managing their minutes through the grind of regular season. Steve Kerr will want to play Steph maybe less than 30 minutes. And if he can manage to keep Dre and Al Horford minutes under maybe 25 minutes in the regular season, that'd be really awesome. To make that happen, I think the Warriors don't just need a few solid rotation players. They need depth. Maybe a 10, maybe 11, or maybe even 12-man rotation just to survive in the regular season and get to April healthy and intact. So do you think there's a realistic goal for the Warriors this offseason? Can they build that kind of depth with the resources they have?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It's something we've heard a lot about. You know, the Warriors are kind of too old, as people say. I've also heard that this idea that they have, 16 game players, like a lot of guys who are good for the playoffs. But what you really need, throughout the season, as you said, is some depth in there. Because these old guys, they get hurt much easier than the younger ones. Yeah. And you're missing players, it makes it much harder to win games if you don't have the depth. That's part of also why, they kind of want Kuminga back, because that's a young player, very durable, can play a lot of games, especially if Steph or Jimmy or Draymond's sitting out. That's a lot of minutes he can eat up. But in terms of, filling out the roster, I do, based on what we've been hearing in terms of the names, I don't know how much youth there is. How Horford's older. Melton's not that old, but he has that injury history. Seth Curry, Steph's brother, is another name that's been circulated. Potentially bringing Gary Payton back also, but he's another, older injury-prone player. So it does pose a bit of a challenge because, the players that they have and the players they're linked to, they're not necessarily, these young, durable guys. And I mean, you do have some of them on the team, Podziemski, Santos, Moody, but is that enough to get through the season? I think that is definitely a concern.
this is a very tricky situation and tough off-season for Golden State.
Yeah.
Let's get straight to Jonathan Kuminga's sign and trade situation, because he
Sure.
clearly wants to be someone who can dictate offense, and he said he doesn't want to be a second option, or like he doesn't want anything unstable rotation kind of thing. So there has been a lot of talks around Jonathan Kuminga's sign and trade situation, and I saw a lot of confusions and informations surrounding the rules for a potential Kuminga sign and trade. So one of the most common misconception is that the Warriors can only take back 50% of JK's new salary because of the BYC rules. But you point out that in your articles on Domination HQ that the standard salary matching rules still apply on top of BYC. So can you help us break it down and what exactly BYC and how the salary matching works in the context of Jonathan Kuminga to sign and trade?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I did, touch on that in my article. I was hopefully trying to make it clearer. But basically how it works with someone like Kuminga, what BYC does is it basically takes your tradable salary and it cuts it in half. So if his next contract is, as I put in the article, like $25 million, if the Warriors are sign and trading him, that means that they're only sending out $12.5 million. And the reason this is a thing is because the NBA didn't want teams just sign and trading a bunch of their players that they weren't, interested in bringing back, but they just wanted to use as salary to get someone. Like if Houston just signed and traded like 4 of their free agents at like ridiculous salaries just to get Durant, it's kind of circumventing the system. So that's why this exists. But in terms of how it works in the sign and trade, while Kuminga's salary as the outgoing figure is only half, it's still the normal salary matching rules still apply to that. So the way it works in the NBA, and I have a little bit lower in one of my footnotes here if I can actually show the math. So if you're a team that is below the first apron, you're allowed to take back more than 100% of what you send out. And the way that works is it's between these figures right here. So if you're sending out 0 to 8 million outgoing salary, you can take back 200% of that, and then a little cushion of 250K. And then with the Kuminga situation, right, if you're signing him to a $25 million deal, he only counts outgoing at half of that for the Warriors, so 12.5. That falls into this range right here. So they can take back 12.5 plus 8.3 million. So that's in terms of the salary matching rules. So that's why they can take back about almost 20.8 million for him. But as I pointed out as well, when you do take back more than 100% of what you are sending out, you get hard capped at the first apron, which makes things really difficult because that puts a hard line at where you can fill out the rest of your roster.
So in that case, you can't use tax mid-level exception for Al Horford or other players.
You can, but it has to fit within the first apron. So for Horford, the taxpayer mid-level, there's actually a couple of mid-levels. There's the taxpayer and the non-taxpayer. So the taxpayer is about almost 6 million. The non-taxpayer is about 14. But if you use the taxpayer, you have to be below the second apron. But if you use the non-taxpayer, you have to be below the first. So if you sign Horford, and one of the reasons they haven't done this is that hard caps you at the second apron. And obviously when you get hard cap there, you can't surpass it. So if they trade Kuminga and they trade him for, a player who's making more than the 50% that he's making, they get hard cap at the first apron. So that lowers the amount you have to fill out, the team. And maybe if I showed this in a spreadsheet, it will make more sense actually looking at the figures. Let's see if I can.
Let's do that.
So this is kind of just the mock I put out here in terms of what the roster could look like. You got Horford. This is at the taxpayer, Melton and Seth Curry and Peyton and Tui at minimums. And then I just put this 23 million figure here, Kuminga. But this roster is hard capped at the second apron. And as you see here, they finish about 8,000 below it.
Wow.
So it's legal. Yeah, but now let's say that you traded Kuminga and his 25 million for a player making 14 million. If you put this 14 in here instead, now you are actually 2 million above the first tax apron where you're hard cap. So this roster currently isn't legal. So you would have to, take out Gary Payton, and you probably have to take out Seth. And then we'd have to move Tui up here and probably sign Richard to the roster. So it would look something like this. Because you have to now be below the first apron.
Yeah.
So it lowers the amount of total team salary. So as you see, now we're about 450K below it. And this is a legal roster. But because we're hard cap at the first apron, we now had to take out, Gary Payton and Seth Curry. So it's basically just trying to fit the roster between the different hard caps if you happen to trigger them.
In terms of trade target, there have been multiple reports that Sacramento has shown interest in JK, and even a report that Kuminga has had contact with the Kings in the past couple of days. If a sign and trade with Sacramento were to happen, who would be your dream target in return? And more realistically, what kind of deal do you think the Warriors could actually get done?
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, with Sacramento, it's a bit difficult if you look, kind of at their roster. Let's see if I can pull it up. So this is spot rack. This is what they have right now. If you look at guys like Levine and Sabonis, they're making, $40 million. It's not very realistic.
Yeah.
Even with DeRozan at 25, it's just hard to make the trade work. So, I mean, one deal that was floated as reportedly an offer was Devin Carter and Dario Saric.
Yep.
And if we go into, Saric makes about 5.4. So the thing here is the math is really difficult to make work. So even in that reported offer, well, let me actually talk about this one because I was working on some ideas today. Malik Monk would be interesting. But the thing with him, right, is if you bring in Malik Monk, you can't just do it with Kuminga because then it doesn't work in terms of filling out the roster with Horford at the mid-level at the apron. So you'd have to attach Buddy Hield as well. But if you try to send Buddy Hield to Sacramento, they're now taking back more than they're allowed. So the trade isn't legal for them. So you need a third team like Detroit or Brooklyn to make it happen. So this is a scenario I think would make sense. I don't know if the Kings would do Malik Monk because I think he is a pretty good player. And then going to the other example with Saric and Carter, that trade does work mathematically. The only issue right now is Saric is trade restricted, so he can't be traded with other players until September. And I don't know if they want to wait till September. So
right,
it makes it a bit difficult.
I saw another team that keeps coming up in JK's sign and trade situation is the Phoenix Suns. Do you think, is there any framework for potential deal?
Yeah, so I mean, one deal we've heard kind of talked about with Phoenix is potentially a deal centered around Nick Richards and Royce O'Neal.
Yeah.
The only issue with that is I don't know how enticing that is to the Warriors, getting to decent level rotation players. Phoenix doesn't really have picks they can trade, so it's not like you're getting really assets out of it.
Yep.
So you'd mostly be getting, two decent rotation level players, but is that worth to them more than just keeping Kuminga? I don't know. It's, I don't think they would do that.
Yeah. Another name mentioned in Phoenix trade was Grayson Allen, but he has 3 years, 57 million left in his contract, and the Warriors want to keep their books clean beyond 2027. Do you think even Grayson Allen can happen?
I mean, in terms of it being tradable, yes, because if you're sending out Kuminga at say 12.7, as you can see here, this is a legal trade for the Warriors, and it's also legal for the Suns. The issue that happens here is if we take Grayson and we put him into the roster. So what do I have here? So that's with Malik. So if I put Grayson Allen's salary in here, or I guess it does work out. Oh no, because that's with Buddy. So if we keep Buddy and we just add Grayson to down here. Sorry, let me put Buddy Hield back. Where is Buddy? There's Buddy. So this is like your normal 9 people.
Yep.
And then you have Horford, Melton, Seth, and I don't know, this can be, we'll put Alex Tui in there as well, just to make it work. Here we go. Yeah, so this is the normal roster, and then you add Grayson. The problem now is that you are 3.4 million over the first apron, which you're not allowed to do, because Grayson, you're getting more salary back here than you're sending out with Kuminga. So what that means is that you would have to cut another 3.4 million from the roster. And even if you signed, Richard instead of, Seth Curry, so you could lower it a little bit, it still wouldn't be enough because that's only about $1 million difference. So you'd have to send out someone else. And who would you send out? Buddy Hield? just to get Grayson Allen. I don't know if that would make sense. Or if Horford just decided to not take the mid-level and, took a pay cut for Grayson Allen, but is he doing that for Grayson Allen? So that's what makes the math really tricky, because you have to fit stuff under the apron.
So do you have anything that likely to happen in Kuminga sign and trade scenario? I saw you're working on your trade machine.
Yeah, I mean, the one name I've been thinking about is Kobe White. I don't know if, because Chicago has to deal with Josh Giddey, another restricted, kind of in the same situation as Kuminga. So, but there has been talks of them having interest in Kuminga as well, and I think Kobe White is really the one name who would make sense for the Warriors and be like a big addition. And the thing with White is he only has 1 year on his contract, and it's not clear if Chicago wants to keep him moving forward. So that's the one name I'd be interested in. I just don't know how willing Chicago is to A, move him, and B, their interest in Kuminga. But if we're the teams we're hearing about, Phoenix and Sacramento, I don't know if there's really much there to make a deal happen. If I had to guess, the way this ends is Kuminga just comes back, and I don't think it's on the qualifying offer. I think he'll take maybe like a 3 for $60 deal or something like that with a player option.
As you said, one of the most likely scenario is the Warriors sign Kuminga and keep him for the start of the season, and then maybe trade him before the deadline. So what's the benefits for the Warriors by doing this?
Yeah, so I mean, for one, it kind of extends the life of the asset, because right now, A, teams aren't really offering anything they like, and B, because of the base year situation, it's hard to really use Kuminga's salary in trades. But once you sign him to that deal, if you sign him for $20 million a year, his salary then actually counts for $20 million when you send him out. So that creates so many more possibilities in terms of trying to use him in a trade. And if you bring him back and you allow him the opportunity to even not maybe start, but like have a big role and put up points, that maybe will even increase his market and more teams will be interested. So I think the benefit to both sides is, you keep it, even if you guys aren't happy with the marriage, you keep it going a little bit longer. Kuminga gets, a lot more money than he would just by signing the qualifying offer. And, you create a better, situation where he can showcase himself, and maybe that helps, create a better trade opportunity come January, come February. So.
JK was a teammate in G League with Jaylen Green, right? And there's a report or rumors saying that Kuminga's benchmark was Jaylen Green's new contract. But then in Jaylen Green's contract, there is a trade kicker. When he gets traded, he get raised. I think if Warriors to trade Jonathan Kuminga, he would like to have trade kicker in his new contract.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like, this is the Green contract right here. As you can see, it's a 3-year deal, got a player option, has that 10% train bonus, as you said. I do think if Kuminga comes back, it's going to be probably something similar. I don't think it's going to be at this 30 million number. I think that's a bit high. We've been hearing, like 25 is what his camp is looking for at this point. I would expect something like 20 to 25, somewhere in there. I think would make sense. But yeah, I think about the same structure. Probably the player option to have him, he would be, I think, 24 or 25 as well at that time. So he'd still be fairly young on that, I guess, third contract he's looking for. And the trade bonus would make sense, because, if he gets traded, it gives him a little salary bump. And I think that's, a one way to incentivize him to sign. It also doesn't count against your cap until it's triggered. So, I think something like Jaylen Green's contract definitely is kind of a good idea to look at as what it could look like. I don't think it will be at this high of a figure, but the structure, definitely.
Yeah, if he signs to a deal between 20-23 millions per year and with trade kicker, and I think he will be a very interesting asset for other teams. He's young, athletic, So I think if Warriors can land the contract, it'll be really good. So then when would the Warriors actually be allowed to trade Jonathan Kuminga if that happens? What's the earliest possible timeline?
Yeah, sure. So I've been seeing some misinformation about kind of dates. Some people have said August 6th is an important date. The reason, so it's not, but people think August 6th is important because last year when, there was the Lauri Markkanen trade speculation, for him, his trade and renegotiation on his contract because it was like a extend and trade rule. That's why that was a 6-month figure. So for Kuminga, this isn't a thing. The dates for him to watch is going to be October 1st. That's when the qualifying offer expires. So the Warriors can extend that. If they don't, it basically takes any offer off the table, and Kuminga can either just re-sign with them or not. And so that's kind of the last point of any leverage he has. In terms of the trades itself, if he re-signs, it'll be January 15th would be the day he'd be eligible. So the Warriors would have about a month to try to trade him. If he does sign a bit later into the year, which I don't think would happen, but if he signs past a point in November, then he wouldn't be trade eligible. But January 15th really is, I think, the date to look at.
Gotcha. I don't think this is a likely scenario, but
Sure.
there's also the scenario where Jonathan Kuminga signs his qualifying offer. If he goes the route, what happens next? What would that mean for the Warriors and Kuminga's future?
Yeah, so his qualifying offer is $8 million. If he signs that, he will not be trade eligible for the next season. Well, he will have a no trade clause, which means that he can veto any trade. But if he agrees to it, the Warriors can trade him. The only issue with that is his bird rights do not transfer, and bird rights are what teams use to re-sign players when they don't have cap space. For example, like the Warriors could re-sign Kuminga right now to 25, 30 million because they have bird rights. If they didn't have that, then they couldn't. They would just have to use the mid-level. And because those rights don't transfer, any team who's trading for him, they don't really benefit from trading for him if they want him long-term. For that season, sure, but if they want him long-term, they basically have the same option as any other team to sign him. And that's really the point of trading, is to get the bird rights. So you basically just wouldn't trade him, and after that season, he'd be unrestricted and he'd be free to sign with any team. So you'd lose him. You'd lose your right of first refusal. So yeah, but I mean, the risk there for Kuminga, is if you suffer an injury, or even if you don't suffer an injury, just if the relationship with the Warriors is bad, and Steve Kerr isn't playing you, I don't know if your market's any better than it is this year. So it's just not very advisable. But we don't know what's going to happen with that. But I would be very surprised if they did. I think it makes more sense to just sign a long-term contract at a higher figure and just figure it out from there. But you never know.
Yeah, the funny thing is that I saw an article about Jonathan Kuminga is seriously considering signing his qualifying offer, but I'm not sure how realistic that is. Because
I would say that's more just negotiation leverage. He wants the Warriors to think that, but I don't think he thinks that. So.
Yeah, because he wants to sign a 1-year deal to boost his value in the teams where they don't play him. So I don't believe this is true. But as you said, it's a leverage play. But do you think Jonathan Kuminga has leverage, or the Warriors have more leverage in this situation?
The Warriors definitely have more leverage just because he's restricted, so Kuminga doesn't really have a lot of options. If a team, doesn't put in an offer sheet, like Brooklyn, really the only team right now who could, he's kind of just stuck because the Warriors aren't going to agree to sign and trade unless they're happy with what they're getting. And, I mean, Kuminga can threaten to take the qualifying offer or do it, but I just don't know if that's a good option for him in terms of, like, financial security. So the Warriors have the leverage here. Obviously, for them, they would prefer to not have this hanging over them, so they still want to find a happy medium. But still, I think it's a lot more in their favor. So
happy medium is the key word. Kuminga is stuck, and the Warriors are also stuck because I believe they are waiting for these Kuminga dominoes to fall, and then maybe they can sign Hopeful and other players, right?
Yeah.
We can look around the league and, other than just Kuminga's situation,
Sure.
Who do you think Warriors will target in the free agent?
Yeah, free agency-wise, I mean, there's still a pretty decent market if we look here. These are all the available free agents right now. All the red ones are restricted, like you see with Kuminga. We know that Horford and Melton, two guys, basically we can pencil into the Warriors. We've heard a lot about Seth Curry, Gary Payton. I also wouldn't be surprised if they'd have some interest in bringing back Kevin Knox, maybe even Pat Spencer. Those are two guys that are on the roster. Last year were pretty decent. Other than that, there haven't been a ton of rumors, honestly. Just looking at the market in terms of interesting players, Amir Kofi is a pretty good three-point shooting wing. Chris Boucher, actually a former Warrior himself. He's a pretty good stretch big. Trey Lyles, Sacramento guy, pretty good stretch four. Ben Simmons, he's probably going to sign in Boston or New York, is what we've been hearing, but that's a big name on the market as well. other than that, I mean, there's still a couple of names out there. I don't know how interested the Warriors are or not. I think they're pretty set with what they have and what we've heard is being reported.
Yeah.
But there are some interesting names. One name I'll throw out there, I don't know if people remember him, Daquan Plowden. He was actually on the Warriors for a little bit last summer. He's a really talented guy, so I would like to see him back. I don't know if that'll happen, but
Fingers crossed.
yeah.
So before we wrap this up, is there anything else you'd like to add or any interesting angles you think we should be watching right now from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all going to be quiet until we see what happens with Kuminga. I don't know how quickly that's going to be resolved. I do think this will probably happen sometime in August, I would say. I don't know if it's going to drag on any further. From Kuminga's side, I think the longer you wait, the worse the eventual deal you're going to sign is because,
Yes.
the Warriors don't have to bring up their offer. So I think it's in his bench's interest to try to find, a solution. And maybe that's lowering, his expectations a little bit. But yeah, I think once that falls, the Warriors will start actually, doing stuff like signing Horford and Melton, maybe Seth Curry, Gary Payton. And then, we'll get to training camp. If you look at, the training camp roster, I think the two ways are interesting. Jackson Rowe had a really strong summer league. Taron Armstrong from Australia is someone they really like. He has a qualifying offer as well, actually, that he hasn't signed, but he probably will. And then you got a couple of Exhibit 10 guys. And then I think for me, the biggest question is what happens with the draft picks. You have Will Richard and you have Alex Tui. You can sign him to the main roster. It's actually cheaper than signing someone like Gary Payton because of the rookie minimum. So there's a chance that either one or two of those guys is on the roster. But if not, then one of them will probably get a two-way. So I think seeing what the end of the roster looks like after the whole Kuminga thing is settled is going to be very interesting, especially in training camp.
I hope we can hear any news from the Warriors soon.
Me as well.
So tell us about where can you find your work and how to follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Twitter, or I guess X as it goes by these days. Also on Blue Sky. I write sometimes for Dub Nation headquarters. I also moderate the Warriors subreddit. And then, I have this cap sheet I maintain. I also have this off-season depth chart where I keep track of every single team's depth chart. Try to be on top of that too. So, I got some content out there. Please give me a follow. Please share my work if you appreciate it. Thank you for having me as well. This was a really great conversation. I'm happy to try to help educate the fans as best as I can. And of course, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm very responsive on X and Blue Sky. So, just DM me or mention me. I'll see it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I know our audience here will really appreciate your insight. Wishing you a great Saturday night and thank you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate you.